This is the Megatherium, a giant sloth that roamed Earth just 12,000 years ago. This beast stood more than 3.5 meters tall. And today, we're gonna see what this creature was all about. Oof, that one hurt. But this is just one way you might die from a prehistoric animal. Creatures that lived thousands or millions of years ago were absolutely terrifying. From giant dinosaurs to the largest snakes ever discovered. If you were to come face to face with any of these creatures, there's a pretty good chance you'd end up dead. But how would that shake down? Okay, let's start by sending Digipeater 60 million years into the past. This is the Cretaceous period. During this period, part of the Mesozoic era, there's a good chance you could come face to face with a Titanoboa. A Titanoboa was nearly twice as big as any snake living today. They grew to more than 12.5 meters long and typically weighed over 1,000 kilograms. These giant snakes would lurk in swampy rainforests in what's now known as Colombia.
Titanoboa is such a big animal that, like big animals, it probably spent most of its time in the water. It would have been in aquatic environments for a good part of it, simply because it's so big, it's going to be hard to hide.
That's Dr. Michael Caldwell, one of the leading paleontologists here in Canada. Our correspondent Rose spoke with him and other prehistoric experts to figure out how I would die from these creatures. Thanks, Rose.
No problem, Peter. And speaking of which, what would happen if the Titanoboa attacked you?
Now, a snake this big needs a lot of food. And seeing a piece of prey the size of Digipeater, it would attack instantly. But how? Well, these snakes would swim through the water, using it for camouflage to get close enough to attack. They often hung out near lakes and rivers, waiting to strike. As it approaches Digipeater, the Titanoboa would open its mouth, sinking its curved teeth into him in order to grip and secure his body. A Titanoboa would then coil its body around you rapidly. The feeling would be like you were being crushed by the Eiffel Tower. Oh, poor Digipeater. This feels wrong. So, is there a possibility that we don't have to use a Digipeater? We could use somebody else in a 3D model? No, not a possibility? Okay. As the Titanoboa wraps around your body, it would eventually stop your blood from flowing. And we all know what that leads to.
Honestly, if it was coming after you, you probably wouldn't stand much of a chance. If it's got to be you versus the snake, my vote's going for the snake.
Sorry, Peter, this doesn't sound like it'd be very good for you. How is it that the Titanoboa can open its jaws so wide that it could swallow you whole?
Particularly the boa and python kind have really developed extremely elastic muscles and soft tissues in the throat region.
Snakes' esophaguses blow up like a balloon and then deflate over time, so you can apply the same logic to the Titanoboa.
The body of the animal is so large that just weight alone, it pins you to the ground, and it's going to get a hold of your head with its mouth, and you're going to be crushed just under the weight of the animal. Whether it could or could not constrict you really wouldn't matter.
Great, thanks for making this even worse for me. Now, as you're passing through the Titanoboa's body, you're slowly being dissolved by the snake's stomach acids. This would be a long, slow, and painful process. Remember, it's a 12.5 meter snake. Well, it wouldn't really be painful since you're already dead. And by the time the Titanoboa has finished digesting you, virtually nothing would be left. That's right, the Titanoboa's stomach acids are so strong that even your bones would be dissolved. The only parts of you remaining would be your nails and some of your hair.
So even though the Titanoboa's belly might be full, it might not be for the best.
If you choose to eat a big goat, you're sitting there for 3 or 4 days before you can move. That has serious biological repercussions because anything walking by and you're just like a snack with another snack inside of you.
So Peter, even though now you're eaten by a Titanoboa, you can at least be happy that the predator has now become the prey.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, let's rank these deaths on our pain scale. I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10 because we have some even more terrible scenarios coming up. Okay, now that's how you die 60 million years ago. Now let's go back a little further, 66 million years into the past. This is the age of dinosaurs. Lurking around every corner is something that wants to kill you. Let's see how Digipeter fares. Why is the ground shaking? Oh no, oh gosh, it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I better start moving. Run, little guy, run! This nearly 7,000 kilogram beast was the ruler of the dinosaur kingdom. Hunting in complete solitude, it's approaching Digipeter at nearly 60 kilometers per hour. Yeah, I don't think I stand a chance here. Maybe I can survive by hiding behind a tree or staying very still. After all, the T-Rex was only good at detecting prey when it's moving. It had eyes the size of oranges, which are bigger than any mammal we have living today. There's no chance my digital legs are getting away from this. All of a sudden, the T-Rex bites with its banana-sized teeth. It had a bite force of nearly 13,000 psi. That would feel like you were being crushed by a building. Then, it would tear the flesh off your bones until they were stripped clean. That doesn't look too fun. But what do we really know about the T-Rex? I mean, other than what we've watched in the movies. What do the experts have to say?
I went to the Canadian Museum of Nature to talk with Dr. Jordan Mallon to find out. I saw online that Tyrannosaurs are really fast runners. They can run up to 45 kilometers an hour. Is that true?
I think the consensus nowadays is T-Rex probably wasn't as fast as you suggested, probably more like half that. It would have needed more muscle dedicated to its legs than it possibly could have fit on those legs. Because of course, the bigger you are and the faster you want to move, the more muscle you need. And at some point, the amount of muscle required to move a certain speed is just impossible.
Not only that, but if the T-Rex were to move at speeds over 40 kilometers an hour, that would increase its chances of falling over. Which, according to Dr. Mallon,
if you've got an animal moving that fast and it falls at those speeds, forget about it. Like, that's a dead animal.
Okay, maybe its speed is over-exaggerated in movies, but you know what isn't? Their size. The T-Rex is ridiculously massive. It wasn't until I got to see a cast of its skull where it really started to click.
You know, T-Rex could eat you in one bite effectively. You know, the skull's 4 or 5 feet long.
And its teeth were even more terrifying.
What's really cool about T-Rex is that its teeth are unlike those of many other meat-eating dinosaurs. They're almost like banana-shaped. And this would have allowed T-Rex to not just cut through meat, but crush bone.
This kind of feels like a dagger slash really, really heavy knife with tiny serrations on both sides. I feel like this could kill somebody, honestly. It gets even worse. There's some evidence that suggests T-Rexes might have traveled and hunted in packs. So Peter, it looks like there's some good and bad. On one hand, the T-Rex is ridiculously massive, deadly, and you might have to deal with a couple at a time. But on the other, it's not as fast as we thought, so you might have a chance to outrun it. Good luck.
Okay, let's try this again. So, if you were transported 66 million years into the past and a T-Rex was coming for you, it might look something like this. Instead of just one T-Rex, Digipeter is dealing with 3, 4. He can try standing still in hopes that the T-Rexes don't see him, but wait, that doesn't look like it's gonna work. T-Rexes actually had amazing eyesight, and they didn't rely on movement to see their prey. They had better eyes than a modern-day hawk, so seeing prey was incredibly easy.
One of the really distinctive features about T-Rex in particular is that its eyes face forward like yours and mine. It had binocular vision. It had an overlapping field of view. So the eyes would have been located one here and in the same socket on the other side here. That's a big eye. It would have taken in a lot of light, so they almost certainly had good vision.
So, Digipeter has no choice but to run away and hope for the best. And this time, running might be his best option. Oh no, never mind. Remember, T-Rexes were also ambush predators, so you likely wouldn't even have the chance to run away from them.
Jurassic Park, the T-Rex in that movie was always roaring and announcing its presence. You knew it was getting close before it was there because it was causing the ground to shake. And very likely T-Rex was not quite so loud.
Instead, they'd sneak up on you, chomp down, and kill you. Then the whole group of T-Rexes would devour your body, bones and all.
So if the T-Rex ate everything and it was a bone crusher, did it actually eat the bones of the animals that it ate?
Yes, and I've got something to show you here. This is actually a T-Rex turd. There was some science done on this. It was put inside of a CT scanner, and it contains many fragments of dinosaur bone.
Ooh, this one is nasty. This is an 8 on the pain scale. But the T-Rex wasn't the only deadly creature that would be out to get you. Another deadly dino and Jurassic Park star during this time? The raptor. If they're anything like what we see in the movies, these guys are terrifying and extremely dangerous. Early research depicted these creatures standing at about 2 meters tall, that's 6 feet. They would easily use their size and strength to overpower Digipeter. The main thing you'd need to watch out for? Their sharp, sickle-shaped claws. These claws could inflict fatal wounds or disembowel you almost instantly. And good luck outrunning them. A raptor could run at speeds of over 40 kilometers per hour.
This sounds pretty bad for you, but I wonder if we can get a second opinion.
So the velociraptors in Jurassic Park were nowhere as big as they were depicted. Velociraptors in life were more turkey-sized. They're quite a bit smaller.
Good news, but you still gotta worry about those claws.
Historically, the thinking was that killer claw there, the idea was that really it slashed open the belly of its prey.
But current research suggests that these so-called killer claws may have been quite different.
The problem is that when you actually look at the cross-section of the claw, it's not especially sharp or pointed, it's quite rounded. And so now the thinking is that maybe that claw was used to, like as a crampon, maybe to climb up on top of its prey, or maybe it was used to hold down the prey while the jaws did the dirty work.
In order to get our answer, I wanted to know just one simple thing. If a human was to hunt a raptor, who would win?
One-on-one?
Yep.
I think humans are pretty smart. I'll go advantage human.
Okay, but what does that mean for Digipeter? How many could he take on?
So I'll give you 5. 5, yeah.
That's pretty good.
How many raptors do you think I could take on?
11.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
All right, I like my odds. So, based off what we now know about raptors, maybe an attack would look more like this. Let's start by making the raptor way smaller and adding some feathers, another thing Dr. Mallon told us. Now it kind of looks more like a modern-day bird. And just like we're not afraid of most birds, you probably don't need to be incredibly scared of raptors. Sure, they might attack and hurt you. Again, they have the claws and the sharp teeth, but in terms of them killing our Digipeter, they don't really stand a chance. The only other thing Digipeter would have to worry about is if these raptors traveled in packs.
A lot of people think that raptors moved about in packs, that they were pack hunters. Again, that's thanks to the movies. But we actually don't have great evidence for pack hunting in any of these animals.
Phew, okay. Then I'm gonna chalk this up as a win for me. Or for Digipeter. It looks like there's a good chance he'd survive an encounter with a raptor. So this is more like a 5 out of 10 on the pain meter. Okay, let's get back to our giant sloth. Would dying at the slow hands of this creature really be that bad? Well, again, our correspondent Rose may have the answer.
You might think of a giant sloth as, well, sloth-like, moving slowly and methodically. I'm talking 1/4 of a kilometer an hour, but they're actually a lot faster than that. I talked to Marisa Gilbert to find out more.
They probably moved around 3 to 5 kilometers an hour, and they probably were able to do short bursts of, 8 kilometers an hour, but they were not very fast animals.
But we wouldn't have to worry about it killing us, right? These giant sloths were strictly herbivores.
We can say that yes, they were eating plant material. We know they were eating stems, foliage, leaves, that sort of thing, fruits.
But this time, instead of this giant sloth attacking us humans, it may have been the other way around. Megatherium may have gone extinct due to humans and climate change.
Sites have found tool marks on Megatherium and other ground sloth bones. And so it's safe to say that yes, it was a great resource for our ancestors. They were hunting and utilizing ground sloths for sure.
Finally, now it's time for some revenge. Instead of Digipeter constantly getting his butt kicked by prehistoric creatures, he's gonna fight back and win. The Megatherium was a type of giant sloth that originated in South America. Around 35 million years ago, when humans hunted these beasts, we did so with a variety of different tactics. Instead of using brute force and chasing these animals down, we used a more stealthy approach. And that's what Digipeter is going to do. Let's equip him with a stone spear and see what happens. As he approaches the local watering hole, he sees a giant sloth, ready for the taking. This could mean food for him and his tribe for the next 3 months. But remember, it's a giant sloth. These creatures were massive. They needed multiple humans to take them down. So, let's duplicate Digipeter and give him a fighting chance. Ah, that's better. Okay, now this should be a walk in the park. Our Digipeters go and ambush the Megatherium, poking and prodding with their spears, but as they continue their fight, it's not looking good. What happened here? Well, even though we had all the advantages we could think of, hunting a giant sloth was still no easy task back in the day. Even though they were mainly herbivores, they were pacifists. They'd still fight back when pushed into a corner. Their claws were more than 30 centimeters long. That's 1 foot. They mainly used them for digging roots, but now they're being used for clawing humans. If you got swiped with one of these, you'd be left to bleed out. A slow, painful death. You might be able to recover, but without modern medicine, the chances are pretty slim. This is an 8 out of 10 for me. Okay, next, we're going over 300 million years into the past to experience the Carboniferous period. This era had one particularly terrifying trait: giant insects. Now, this was because of really high oxygen levels in the atmosphere at the time. The insects drank it up. The extra oxygen allowed them to grow bigger than we've ever seen. One of the most notable bugs, the Arthropleura. This giant centipede-like creature was over 2 meters long. Once it sees you, it'll rush on over and start biting you with its giant fangs. An insect this large is surely going to want to attack you. Maybe it wants your blood. Or at least that's what you think would happen with an insect so large. Actually, research suggests that the Arthropleura was a super slow-moving insect. It hung out in forests and dined on dead plant material all day. It wouldn't be interested in you or any other creature. I'm giving this one a 0 on the pain scale. Okay, so we might not have to worry about a giant insect coming after us, but one creature we will have to worry about? The saber-toothed tiger. Let's fast forward from the Carboniferous to just 56 million years ago, a time when these beasts were one of the apex predators. These giant cats weighed over 200 kilograms and could run up to 40 kilometers per hour, but only for short bursts. And due to this lack of running, saber-toothed tigers were ambush predators. They'd hide in the bushes and the tall grass, waiting to strike. And when they did, they'd pounce on you with their giant claws and teeth. Their canine teeth could be up to 20 centimeters long. But once they got hold of you, there'd be no going back. The saber-tooth would be on top of you, clawing and biting. It would likely go for your neck first to incapacitate you, kill you. Then it would feast on the rest of you. But unlike most predators during these times, this ferocious tiger wouldn't consume everything. It'd feast on your muscles and your flesh, but leave your bones. This is because it didn't want to damage its valuable canine teeth. Remember, we're about 56 million years away from veterinary dentists. Without the canine teeth that this beast was named for, it wouldn't be all that scary.
And you probably wouldn't have to worry about these saber-toothed tigers attacking you in the first place.
So we don't have any evidence of any tool marks on Smilodon, and we don't have any evidence of Smilodon attacking or having used humans as prey. We do know that they overlapped in time and space for quite some time. And I could say with certainty that there were encounters. They did see each other. They lived in the same place. They utilized the same prey. Were they prey? Were they preyed upon? I can't answer that.
So luckily for you, Peter, even if you were in this time period and saw this big cat, you probably wouldn't end up in a fight with one. But let's say you somehow did and wanted to survive. What are you doing next?
Humans would craft spears and strategize on how they'd attack a saber-toothed tiger. They'd also make sure that they set up camps in places that would give them a lot of advance notice if a saber-tooth was about to attack. These first encounters with saber-toothed tigers would be terrifying. Similar to the sloth, a single attack from this beast would mean the end for you. Yeah, I'm giving this one a 9 on the pain meter. But the good news is, it wouldn't always be like this.
After all, these saber-toothed tigers went extinct 10,000 years ago. And it wasn't from humans. There is no evidence that shows we had any significant encounters.
There was climate change happening at the time, and so they were part of that larger megafauna that went extinct at the end of the last ice age.
Okay, next up, the terror croc. About 80 million years ago, this beast reigned supreme. It was over 10 meters long and had a stronger bite force than the T-Rex. Similar to a lot of other animals on our list, terror crocs would ambush you. You'd likely be unaware of their presence due to their ability to camouflage themselves near the water. If you got too close, a terror croc would quickly lunge at you with its powerful open jaws and then bite down. And if its bite didn't kill you, it would perform the death roll. This is when a terror croc drags you underwater and spins you rapidly. This kind of punishment would almost certainly kill you. At that point, the terror croc would use its massive teeth to chew you into chunks, splitting your body into multiple pieces. And then the terror croc would consume every last chunk of you. Now, similar to modern-day crocodiles, the terror croc had a highly acidic stomach acid that was capable of dissolving your bones. Ugh, I think I'll pass. Now, given that these creatures basically roam around today, I'm giving this a 10. More on the fear scale, but also on the pain meter. Regardless of whatever creature we think we might be able to take on in a fight, I think coming across any of these scenarios would be terrifying. Let's just say I'm pretty happy that humans are at the top of the food chain in our modern world.
How cool would it be to see a real-life T-Rex? If only that one fatal asteroid never hit the Earth. Would dinosaurs still be alive today? Would they have evolved? Would humans have survived this long? Could we ever learn to coexist? This is What If, and here's what would happen if dinosaurs never went extinct. Until 66 million years ago, dinosaurs of all shapes and sizes roamed the Earth. Intelligent, adaptable, and sometimes weighing as much as 2 jet planes, it's hard to believe that it only took one rock to wipe them all out. Of course, this was no ordinary rock. The asteroid that took out the dinosaurs was 9 miles wide and hit Earth with the destructive force of 10 billion Hiroshima bombs. The radioactive shockwave obliterated everything for hundreds of miles in every direction, and 75% of all species on Earth went extinct. If that asteroid had hit just a little earlier, a little later, or even a few miles off course, we would be living in a very different world today. The rock that killed the dinosaurs struck the shallow waters of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Had it landed a little farther off the coast, in a deeper part of the ocean, the water might have absorbed some of the blast, along with its devastating effects on the atmosphere. But even if the asteroid missed the Earth, dinosaurs would have to survive several significant global events in order to make it to the present day. 55 million years ago, temperatures rose. The climate was 8 degrees hotter than it is today. Rainforests sprouted, and vegetation flourished. Herbivores would have adapted and thrived, but they'd have started to look a little different. The plants of this period were less nutritious and easier to digest, meaning dinosaurs would likely shrink in size, since their new diet wouldn't have as much energy. Roughly 20 million years after that, South America and Antarctica split, creating a cooler and drier world climate. During this period, long-legged, fast-moving dinosaurs would have evolved to travel the huge grasslands stretching out across the globe. Compared to mammals of this period, dinosaurs held significant advantages, such as having more teeth and better eyesight. Considering the dinosaurs were already so advanced, scientists wonder whether mammals would have evolved at all if dinosaurs hadn't gone extinct. It's likely that the big animals we know today would have been prey to dinosaurs. But remember, humans evolved alongside woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats. While those species didn't survive the ice ages of 2.6 million years ago, given the evolutionary traits of some dinosaurs, there's a chance they might have persisted. But what about us? Could we handle freezing temperatures and huge, terrifyingly vicious predators? They say running keeps the body warm, but that might also make you taste better. In an alternate universe, if we did survive alongside these prehistoric beasts, it's possible we could see a real live T-Rex on a protected reserve, not unlike Jurassic Park. Human population growth and excessive hunting would have driven larger dinosaurs to near extinction. Today, they would most certainly be an endangered species, but those that shrank and adapted over millions of years could coexist peacefully among us. In fact, some actually do. Where do you think pigeons came from? It's hard to believe that birds were once the size of biplanes, but then again, it's hard to believe that with a slight twist of fate, we might have walked with dinosaurs. Or we might have become dinosaur chow and not have evolved at all. But seeing is believing at What If. So if you've got a passion for the incredible, then keep watching.
20 million years ago, the Megalodon was king of the oceans. The largest shark that ever lived, it ate other mega sharks for breakfast. But as an ice age engulfed the world, this enormous sea giant's time came to an end. What if, through a miraculous twist of fate, the Megalodon had managed to survive? Just how large and scary would the Megalodon be today? And what would happen to humans who went into the ocean? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Megalodon never stopped evolving. A Megalodon living in the 21st century, one that never stopped evolving, would be a truly frightening and majestic creature. Today's Meg would likely have expanded to the size of a blue whale, about 30 meters long and a hefty 200 tons in weight. That's as heavy as 33 elephants, with a beating heart as big as a car. Today's Megalodon would need to eat 3,600 kilograms of food a day and would be the largest animal that's ever existed. It would also be equipped with some new survival traits, ones that have helped it last these 3 million years. What do you think those traits would be? Well, before we get into the making of Meg 2.0, let's look at what the Megalodon was like in its heyday. Let's go back 23 million years ago, during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs. The Megalodon was roaming about, conquering the oceans. It spanned about 18 meters long. That's 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark we've ever encountered. Since it was so massive, well, obviously it weighed a lot, as much as a space shuttle, about 30 to 65 metric tons. It was equipped with enormous teeth, the size of a human hand. In fact, the word Megalodon, when translated from its origin in ancient Greek, means big tooth. Serrated on one side, these teeth were perfect for sinking into large, meaty fish and tearing them apart. Throughout its life, the Meg, like other sharks, would shed and grow new teeth, possibly growing up to 40,000 teeth over its lifetime. These teeth chewed through a lot of food, about 1,100 kilograms, that's 2,500 pounds every single day. That's the equivalent of 2 cows, 10,000 quarter pounders every single day. But those were off the menu in this era. What was around were the baleen whales. These were a key part of the Meg's diet, and the Meg was also a cannibal if it got a chance. It would happily feast on another Meg if it could. This giant shark was also a ruthless killer. It had a pretty straightforward but effective strategy to finish off its victims. It would slide into the water beneath its prey so it couldn't be seen. Then it would shoot up vertically to slam into the animal at high speed. Imagine being pummeled with 65 tons of pure Meg. The prey, usually large whales, didn't stand a chance against this high-pressure assault. While they were recovering from this full-body blow, the Meg would sink its teeth into the whale, usually in the ribcage area. After that kind of injury, the fight was over. Then the Meg could settle into a nice meal. As a victim of the Meg, you could also get swallowed up whole. Yeah, with a skull 4.5 meters long, it could comfortably take in something as large as a whole family car. So watch out for this terrifying creature when it comes into the modern day. And of course, the Meg had mega babies. Baby Megs were 3 to 4 meters long, so good luck coming out alive if you run into one of those. The Megalodon really came into its own during the Miocene epoch, from 23 to 5 million years ago. At the start of the period, the Earth was warm, but then later it began to cool. During this time, the Meg preferred hanging out in warm, tropical waters. In fact, it roamed multiple places across the globe. Meg teeth, as old as 3 million years, have been found in waters everywhere, except Antarctica. As long as there was enough food to feast on in the water, the Meg was happy. So, with a creature this deadly and powerful conquering the seas, how did it manage to go extinct? Well, maybe it was climate change. During the Miocene period, a cooling trend had begun. This carried all the way into the Pliocene and gave way to a big freeze. During the era after that, 2.6 million years ago, an ice age began. According to one theory, these freezing temperatures from the ice age may not have been suitable for the Meg. They could have led to its extinction. But other scientists disagree. Studying the Meg found that temperature fluctuations seen in earlier periods didn't impact the shark. It managed to survive. The Meg was able to survive changes in temperature because it was partially warm-blooded. It had an adaptation so it could warm its blood using heat from its muscles as it moved. This allowed it to maintain a body temperature 7 degrees Celsius higher than the surrounding water. So while it preferred warmer weather, it could survive in cooler temperatures as well. So what was different about the Pleistocene Ice Age? Well, for one, this ice age was a lot colder than before. The Meg and other creatures that had evolved in the last tens of millions of years had never experienced such a deep freeze. The Pleistocene Ice Age, 2.6 million years ago, was the most severe temperature drop that Earth had faced in the last 500 million years. As the ice crept over the Earth, there was a severe decrease in habitat for both land and sea creatures. Sea levels dropped 200 meters and coastal land areas dried up. As water turned to ice and sea levels dropped, The baleen whale, the Meg's main prey, was fighting to survive. And it wasn't just the cold. Changes in ocean currents reduced the flow of nutrients in parts of the ocean, areas that were prime feeding grounds for the baleen whale. This affected its population. And there was another problem. Baleen whales give birth in warmer waters, but then migrate to colder waters to feed. With the rapid reduction in warmer waters, their breeding grounds would have also been disrupted, another pressure leading to extinction. With baleen whales going extinct, the Meg had to focus on smaller prey, like dolphins and seals. But this would have been a problem because the Meg was facing competition for prey from a smaller and more agile competitor, the great white shark. 1/3 the size of the Meg, the great white shark was nimbler, needed less to eat, and was competing for the Meg's food. Both baleen whales and the quicker dolphins and seals. And in the battle for fast-moving smaller prey, great whites were the winners. The Meg's breeding grounds would also have been disrupted. Its babies lived in nurseries and shallow waters. As sea levels oscillate up and down, these shallow waters would have risen and then receded unpredictably. They would no longer have provided a safe spot for baby Megs to survive. And at the same time, the Meg's massive feeding requirements for energy and to maintain its high internal body temperature were not getting any smaller. So that's what led to the Meg's extinction. Too big to maintain, too much competition, and too little to eat. It feels a little wild that this apex predator essentially starved to death. But could we rewrite history? Could the Megalodon somehow survive into the modern day? Well, let's take a look at a scenario where the Meg was able to evolve to get bigger and more powerful than ever before. In order for the Megalodon to survive, maybe we should see what would happen if we avoided the Ice Age altogether. Ice ages are triggered by several things. One key factor is how far away the Earth is from the Sun, because this impacts the amount of heat Earth receives. Then there are shifts in plate tectonics affecting the movement of land masses and the flow of ocean currents on Earth. So what if this Ice Age never happened? Well, massive volcanic eruptions could have warmed Earth. This happens if they throw large amounts of greenhouse gases like water vapor and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So how about the kind of volcanic action that led to a massive heat spike 56 million years ago? At that time, Earth suddenly got super hot. Massive amounts of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere, raising the temperature by up to 8 degrees Celsius. The seas also became incredibly warm. In the tropics, it was like a warm bathtub with temperatures around 38 degrees Celsius. Maybe this could have offset the coming ice age, but on the other hand, this heat spike also caused a bunch of creatures to go extinct. So it's not clear if this would have been a sure way to save the Megalodon. So we're going to have to look for another miracle to save the Meg. Could the Meg have survived the Ice Age some other way? After all, many other species did. Great white sharks made it through, so did gray whales. So, are there traits that the Meg could have borrowed to make it through this time? The Meg found it difficult to compete with great white sharks for food because the Meg was 3 times larger. The Meg's metabolic requirements would have been significantly higher to maintain that body weight. At the same time, it would have made them less nimble than the great white shark. One solution? The Meg needed to adapt with the times, shrink a little. Maybe the Meg could have borrowed a trait from the skate. This is another fish made of cartilage, just like the Megalodon. Winter skate, living in Canada, have shrunk their body size 45% in response to water temperatures going up 10%. And this didn't take them millions of years. They did this over a period of 7,000 years. This was a response to environmental changes, not a result of gradual natural selection. And the knowledge to do this can be preserved in sharks' genomes. Some sharks have very large genomes containing traits that they can draw on when they need, kind of like a fire extinguisher stored away in a glass box to break open during an emergency. So let's give the Meg this kind of fancy genome. Okay, so now as the ice sets in, our Meg has shrunk. It's 55% as large as it used to be. Don't worry, this change isn't going to last forever. It's just an adaptation the Megalodon will make to get through the Ice Age. Now that it's smaller, its energy needs are lower, and it's better able to compete with those vicious great white sharks. I told you earlier that adult Megs were solitary creatures. Well, that was fine when they were super large. They could bash other large creatures with their superior weight, but now that we've shrunk the Meg down a bit, it's going to need some other strategies. To further help our Megs survive, we're going to take a lesson from killer whales. They're going to form a pod. Maybe the Megs would mimic a behavioral feature of transient orcas. These form smaller pods of up to 5 individuals, which are mainly geared towards hunting. This would be in line with the solitary nature of the adult Megalodon, while at the same time incorporating a behavioral feature that helps the Meg to survive. And while it's doing that, it's going to diversify its diet. It's no longer just baleen whales. Meg, you're going to eat squid, fish, and any other marine animal you come across. This broad diversification of diet helped the orcas survive the last ice age, and it'll help the Meg get through it too. Sharks actually have a super efficient digestive system that makes use of almost everything they eat. Because of this feature, shark poop mostly looks like goo. That's all that's left at the end of digestion after they squeeze all the nutrients out. And now the Meg's goo is going to have even more variety. Good. And next, we'll make the Meg omnivorous. This is a trait we'll take from the bonnethead shark. So occasionally the Meg will eat some seagrass when it needs to survive. Okay, so now we have a smaller Meg, one that hunts in packs and eats a more diverse diet. This Meg is better suited to ward off the threat from great white sharks. And as baleen whales die out, this Meg has other stuff to eat. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about our Meg's chances. But there's one more modification we need to make. We'd like to give the Megalodon an additional feature to help it in colder waters. The Meg already was partially warm-blooded, but it definitely preferred warm subtropical waters. A cold water adaptation would definitely help it survive the future ice ages. So we'll borrow another feature from the whale. We'll give it a thick layer of blubber. This will serve as insulation when waters become super chilly. Okay, are we done? No. Maybe just one more thing. During the Pleistocene Ice Age, the Meg's babies suffered when water receded from the nurseries on the shore. So maybe a change to where the Meg gives birth to its babies would be a good adaptation. For this, we want to borrow a secret from the white shark. Where the white shark gives birth is a mystery to scientists. There are theories that white sharks give birth far out in the water. This trait would have made their babies less vulnerable to the shifting shoreline as the ice ages came and went. If the Meg could adopt this trait, well, it would ensure the survival of the next generation. Okay, so I think our refurbished Meg, I'm going to call it Meg 2.0, is now equipped to take on pretty much anything Mother Nature throws at it. Time for you to jump into the time machine and see how the new Meg fares with this ice age. Then we'll come back to the modern day. 2.6 million years ago. Over the course of the next 7,000 years, you'll see the Megalodon, with its new, larger genome, draw on specific traits to shrink its size. It's now about 50% of what it used to be. Still larger than the great white sharks, but with lower feeding and energy requirements than before. The baleen whales have gone extinct, but the Meg is happy to sink its teeth into any creature. Squids, seals, they're all fair game. The white sharks find their old enemy is smaller and more nimble, and they're surprised that the Meg is now hunting in a pod of 4 or 5. White sharks can't get close as a group of Megs are circling their prey. Just like before, a blow is dealt from beneath, and then, before you know it, the rest of the Megs have pounced on the desperate victim, tearing it to shreds. The white sharks are the losers in the fight with Megalodon 2.0. They pick their spots, but stay clear of direct competition in order to survive. As the Pleistocene era continues, the Earth goes through multiple glaciation cycles. In addition to its partial warm-bloodedness, the additional layer of blubber that Meg 2.0 has enabled it to survive as Earth's waters turned cold. At the height of the Ice Age, the Meg migrates to the warmest waters it can find, around the tropics and subtropics. This was a strategy used by orcas, many of which survived in the warmer waters around Africa during the Ice Age. As Megs from different parts of the globe migrate to these regions to weather the cold, the gene pool becomes more diverse. 13,000 years ago. Okay, while megafauna are going extinct on land because of both shifts in climate and human predators, you can see Meg 2.0, King of the Oceans, is able to survive these shifts. Adapted to both warm and cold waters, and with its new layer of blubber, it seeks refuge in deep, cold waters to survive human hunting expeditions. It gives birth to babies deep in the sea, far from human eyes. 11,700 years ago. Okay, the last Ice Age ends. The Megalodon undergoes a new shift. Its DNA recognizes a change in the environment, signaling that it can grow larger again. In a few thousand years, it doubles its size, and it's back to where it was 2.6 million years ago. There's a lot of food in the oceans. Its hunting strategy is flawless, and its secretive breeding approach ensures the survival of new baby Megs. New generations of the Meg grow bigger and stronger. The Meg reaches a staggering 200 tons. It's 30 meters long, and its teeth are longer and sharper than ever before. Everything in the ocean and on land fears this creature. This is Meg 2.0, the unchallenged king of the oceans. Whales won't be able to grow to the massive size they do today. The Meg's voracious appetite keeps them in check. Modern era. In the 19th and 20th century, humans hunt whales, but they learn to stay clear of the Megalodon. If hunting boats go after them, a pack of Meg 2.0s swarm around the boats and destroy them, attacking in a coordinated effort. The lessons from fighting great white sharks 2.6 million years ago come in handy for this predator. Today, for humans, swimming in the ocean comes with a warning. You may be attacked by a stray Megalodon 2.0. Only swim in areas where lifeguards are around, but I'm not sure they'll be much help. The Meg 2.0 is somewhat misunderstood. It's not that this massive shark targets humans as a food source. After all, the Meg needs 3,600 kilograms of food a day. That means it would have to eat 45 to 60 humans in order to make a meal of us. That's like eating a ton of candy instead of a proper meal. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't still want to eat you if given the chance. And if the water's choppy and humans are splashing about, a stray Meg floating along might mistake a human for a smaller fish. Chomp. But once it realizes you're not a fish, the Meg might back away and try to find something more nutritious. Fishing boats will need to steer clear of the Meg as well. The Meg 2.0 will be dominating the oceans and most popular fishing spots. And it wouldn't take kindly to any competition, even the humankind. These are the areas modern fishing boats would have to fear and avoid, and if they don't, they might end up getting attacked by a pod of angry Megs. This could also affect our ability to fish. Maybe sushi would eventually be off the menu in certain parts of the world. With a creature as dominant as the Megalodon, fishing may become a lot more rare for us humans. But that's if we choose not to fight back. Maybe we'll end up hunting down Megalodons, if we're given the right technology. Or we'll just stay clear of the areas the Meg hunts in. If the Meg were around today, it would be at the top of the marine food chain. As apex predators, they'd keep populations of fish under control. But would the Meg be able to dominate forever? The only thing that threatens their future would be decreasing food in our oceans. With climate change and the oceans becoming more acidic, the marine life that the Meg depends on are dying out. But sea levels are rising. Warm waters are no longer confined to the tropics. The warmth is migrating northward and southward. As sea levels rise to engulf Bangladesh today, Venice tomorrow, will Meg 2.0 have to change its feeding strategy? In a weird and completely unexpected turn of events, will a species of Meg break off and become vegetarian, eating seagrasses to survive? Or will it ride the warm waters to attack coastal populations of humans? Or maybe humans will have to be worried about an entirely new creature that fought back against extinction. What if humans became as big as dinosaurs? Could the consequences be as astronomical as the asteroid that wiped out these prehistoric beasts? Would it be a world-ending event? Even though we think of dinosaurs as huge, killer monsters, many of them were quite small, like the Microraptor. This guy is the smallest known dinosaur. He was
found in China about 125 million years ago.
Chase, hey, I'm talking. You're just demonstrating.
Oh, right, okay. Right. Go ahead.
This dinosaur was only 30 centimeters tall and weighed less than a kilogram, making it the same size as a Subway sandwich or a 2-liter soda. The Microraptor would have been the perfect lunch. It had wings with a similar soaring mechanism to a flying squirrel, but it couldn't actually fly. It could glide and snatch insects out of midair. Now, if all humans shrunk to the same height as this cute little beast, we'd be 18% of our current size. Too small to reach a door handle and too big to crawl through a crack. You'd basically be trapped in your house until someone came to rescue you. And seeing as no emergency service workers would be able to drive their cars or operate any machinery at this size, your best chance of rescue would probably be by 3 people stacked in a trench coat.
Hungry man, come on.
Okay, let's say you left your house and went for a casual stroll down the sidewalk. Well, look out. At this size, you're at the bottom of the food chain, pal. Those city pigeons? Dangerous. And the rats and cockroaches you were already afraid of when you were normal sized, now they're your #1 predators. Battling a rat now would be the equivalent of battling a tiger. Your odds would not be good. But if humans had wings like the Microraptor, we'd be able to soar through the air and evade our new predators. However, with our body composition and our bone density, we'd likely shatter an ankle or two every time we landed. So that wouldn't be much fun. On the plus side, we'd eat way less, although not as little as you might think. Even though your body would be around 80% smaller, you'd still have to eat 35% of the calories you need today. That's because, according to Kleiber's law, your metabolic rate slows down as your body becomes smaller. That means your small body would need proportionally more energy per kilogram to maintain your basic physiological processes. You'd need to constantly be snacking, which, honestly, I don't know if I could snack any more constantly than I already do right now. The same with this guy, Chase.
Hi, sorry. Didn't know you'd be back so soon.
Okay, so humans being the size of Microraptors would be pretty inconvenient, but not necessarily disastrous. Let's upgrade ourselves a little bit. The Utah raptor was found in, get this, Utah. They really need to get more creative with these names. This dinosaur stood 1.8 meters high and was the inspiration for Jurassic Park's velociraptors. actual velociraptors are only as tall as a turkey, which, doesn't read well on screen. If all humans became the size of a Utah raptor, well, not much would change, except that men could stop finally lying on their dating profiles.
Just by the way, I've never lied about that. I'm 6'2", and that's 1.88 meters for my metric girlies.
Yeah, sure, Chase. The Utah raptor is 6 feet flat, and it looks like you're missing a few inches.
Fine, whatever, okay, I'm 5'11"-ish.
You're still lying. But once we became the size of a Utah raptor, well, no one will be 5'11" anymore.
Why would I care?
Overall, we'll be healthier, as scientists have discovered that taller people have lower chances of cardiovascular illnesses, but only up to a point. If humans suddenly became as big as one of the larger dinosaurs, like the Triceratops, we'd be shooting up to 2.8 meters tall. Sure, you'd be able to reach any shelf at the grocery store, but your heart would be struggling to pump enough blood to all parts of your body. And your legs and lower back will be holding up about 130 additional kilograms, so you'd have constant joint pain. You'd still be able to fit into your home, although you'd be smashing your head into plenty more door frames. At that height, you'd be better off losing your bipedalism and start walking on all fours or crawling on the ground baby style. Now, obviously, you're wondering what would happen if we grew to be as big as the biggest, baddest dinosaur of them all, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. This terrifying monster stood 3.7 meters high, a lethal killing machine. If humans were that tall, we'd hardly be lethal. In fact, we'd be quite the opposite. There's not an easy way to say this, so here it is. At the size of a T-Rex, we'd be very dumb.
Yeah, if you didn't think it was possible for people to be dumber, then think of it again.
Your brain would grow proportionally to your body. That means the electrical signals in your brain would need to travel a longer distance, while the speed of those signals would stay the same. Basically, your reaction time would be 2 times slower than it is now. So it's pretty hard to be a deadly predator when your brain is processing while your prey is already running away. And remember all those joint issues you had at 2.8 meters? Well, at 3.7 meters tall, you'd need leg braces and walking canes. And you might be in so much pain that you'd need to use a wheelchair to move around. The only positive here is that your throat cavity would increase and make your voice deeper. That's right.
We don't have the sweet, relaxing tones of Morgan Freeman.
And your what-if narration would be so much better. Almost makes the joint pain worth it.
Okay, let's kick it up a few notches, because the T-Rex wasn't the largest dinosaur out there, not even close. The absolute tallest known dinosaur was the Sauroposeidon. Just like his namesake, the Greek god of the ocean, this dinosaur could shake the earth with just one big footstep.
We may have a problem here. This thing doesn't fit on the screen. It is pretty big.
The Sauroposeidon was so big that when scientists first discovered its fossil, they thought it was a petrified tree trunk. I mean, with a height of 18 meters, that's a pretty understandable mistake.
I mean, the neck alone accounts for over half its height. Isn't that insane?
Yes, please, just keep demonstrating.
Fine. Oh, no.
Oh well, there goes Chase. So sad. Where were we? Alright, if humans became as tall as the Sauroposeidon, the world would see infinitely more destruction than the T-Rex-sized humans could ever dream to cause. Imagine 8 billion people suddenly becoming 10 times our size? We'd rip through our cars and crash straight through ceilings. And that's if every skyscraper wasn't already crumbling from structural damage, because every single one of us would weigh over 80,000 kilograms. No building foundation is built to accommodate that kind of weight. If you live in an urban area, good luck. Either your head is busting through your apartment ceiling, or your building is collapsing beneath you. Suburbanites wouldn't have it much better. Sure, you won't be crushed by a falling skyscraper or one of the dozens of tenants above you, but your musculoskeleton system wouldn't be equipped to carry your own weight. I mean, unless you're already lifting 10 times your body weight. Even the strongest bodybuilders wouldn't be able to stand up. And if that's not enough, your heart wouldn't be strong enough to counteract gravity and would stop pumping blood to your brain. That's right, you're looking at immediate brain failure and imminent death. This is the Titanoboa, one of the largest and deadliest snakes to ever exist. It went extinct 55 million years ago, but what if that never happened? What if the Titanoboa just kept evolving and was alive today? What special traits would this deadly creature have? And how big could it get? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Titanoboa never stopped evolving. Okay, before we look at the modern day Titanoboa, we need to go back. 60 million years ago, the Titanoboa lived in the tropical waters of South America, arriving on the scene after the dinosaurs went extinct. It was a major predator of its time. This snake was unimaginably large. It had a girth of about 1 meter. That means if it were slithering on the ground toward you, it would come up to your waist. It was 14 to 15 meters long, and it weighed over 1,000 kilograms. Luckily, the Titanoboa wasn't venomous, but don't let that trick you into believing it was safe. It had a different way of killing its victims, by squeezing the life out of them. Literally, by wrapping itself around your body or squeezing your windpipe, and then swallowing you whole. And if you tried to slip out, you'd be met with rows of sharp little teeth that would dig into you. But you could see this creature coming, right? No, not a chance. The Titanoboa was the perfect color, a color that allowed it to camouflage itself in its swampy environment. It would sit and wait for the perfect moment to strike. It feasted mainly on fish, turtles, and crocodiles. So, if the Titanoboa was so dominant, what finally made it go extinct? Well, it had to do with a massive change in climate. But to understand this, let's first dive into what made the Titanoboa such a dominant creature, and then how it suddenly went extinct. Paleocene, 66 million years ago to 56 million years ago. Titanoboas emerged after the apex predator niche was left empty by the extinction of the dinosaurs. They thrived in hot and humid environments. Lucky for them, that's what Earth happened to be like 60 million years ago. The average temperature was around 24-25 degrees Celsius. Now, we love that temperature in the summer, but imagine if it were that way the whole year. Instead of ice caps, the poles were covered with forests, and instead of polar bears, there were alligators roaming around. Just like today, a planet even a few degrees hotter is very unpleasant for human beings, so it's a good thing we weren't around at that time. But there's a set of animals that thrive in the heat, cold-blooded ones. Our Titanoboa was cold-blooded, so it loved warm weather. Unlike warm-blooded creatures, cold-blooded animals aren't able to regulate their own body temperature. They use heat from the environment to warm up their bodies and kick their metabolism into a higher gear. So a warmer Earth was perfect for the Titanoboa. It had a supply of external energy to keep its body warm, hunt without mercy, and become one of the largest predators ever. But then the Titanoboa went extinct. Why? Well, a lot of changes were happening at this time. The Earth experienced two very different climate shifts. First, it became very hot, and then it cooled down. With our current evidence, it's not clear if the Titanoboa became extinct during the heat spike or during the cooling phase. So let's look at each change and try and figure out what might have happened. The heat spike event, 56 million years ago. It was 56 million years ago that Earth suddenly got super hot. The official name for this heat spike is the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, or PETM for short. Massive amounts of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere, raising the temperature by up to 8 degrees Celsius. The seas became really hot. In the tropics, it was like a warm bathtub with temperatures around 38 degrees Celsius. There was a mass extinction of creatures in the deep sea. In particular, many single-celled creatures called forams died out. Now, for the Titanoboa, this may have resulted in two different outcomes. It's possible that this giant snake thrived in hot water and became larger. Even if some fish were dying, other reptiles like turtles and crocodiles could have also grown big with the heat and became a great food source for the Titanoboa. So in this scenario, our Titanoboa just gets bigger and badder during the heat spike. But there's another possibility. Maybe the Titanoboa went extinct due to the warmer temperatures. Because the heat spike was so sudden, oceans absorbing carbon dioxide would have become more acidic. Many fish may have died in that acidic warm water, which would have meant fewer fish for the Titanoboa to eat. Now, if this were the case, the Titanoboa would have needed to adapt to survive. What evolutionary change could have helped it survive this heat spike? Well, if the tropical waters were too hot and acidic to live in, moving onto land would have been Titanoboa's best bet. Yeah, switching from a mostly pescatarian diet to being a meat eater. Now, as Earth became warmer, something interesting was happening. Above the waterline, the land was exploding with different types of mammals. Camels, horses, pigs, goats, and giraffes all evolved when Earth was a giant sauna. So, if Titanoboa moved from water to land, it would have found some new foods to keep it going. But because of its large size, living on land would have been difficult. So our Titanoboa would need a different kind of adaptation to get through this temperature spike. The giant snake is going to get some stronger swimming muscles and swim up to the poles, because now the poles have warmed up so much that they're tropical. The ice melted into water and the polar seas were full of crocodiles. The perfect lunch for a hungry Titanoboa. Eocene and Oleocene, 56 million years ago to 23 million years ago. Okay, after 200,000 years, the heat spike was finally over and temperatures went back to what they were before. But another major shift in climate is on the way, a cooling. Around 50 million years ago, temperatures began dropping in a long-term cooling trend that lasted until the dawn of civilization. The once lush forests at the poles are now becoming ice caps. This was bad news for the Titanoboa. The cooler climate didn't suit this cold-blooded snake. It could no longer get the heat it needed from the environment to be able to power itself. It's possible that this led to the Titanoboa's extinction about 55 million years ago. In order to survive, it would have had to evolve in a different and totally unexpected way. In our hypothetical scenario, the Titanoboa becomes warm-blooded. Maybe you're thinking, well, can a cold-blooded animal really become warm-blooded? Well, how is that even possible? Well, it's true that if we look at snakes, we don't see any examples of them being warm-blooded, but there is another category of cold-blooded creatures that have some warm-blooded exceptions. Fish. While the majority of fish are cold-blooded, about 0.1% are partially or fully warm-blooded. For instance, the moonfish is warm-blooded. Bluefin tuna, white sharks, and salmon sharks are kind of both. They use a special mechanism to raise their body temperature called vascular countercurrent heat exchange. Let me show you how it works. Let's use a shark as an example. Now, the muscles they use to swim generate heat, which heats blood in the veins. The arteries bring cold, oxygenated blood from the gills to the shark's muscles and organs. This cold blood picks up the heat from blood in the veins, which then raises the shark's internal temperature. But in the Titanoboa's case, there are no gills involved. It breathes in through its nostrils and has lungs to supply it with oxygen. But we can make it warm-blooded like the shark by having cold blood pumped in through the arteries, which then pick up the heat from the warm blood in the veins. This single evolutionary transformation would allow the Titanoboa to survive the mass cooling. Let's see what happens next. Miocene, 23 million years ago to 5 million years ago. During the Miocene epoch that followed, Earth began to warm a little, followed again by a period of cooling. The climate became drier and vegetation was more coarse. Rhinos were dominant in North America. Many species of horses evolved, as did a variety of camels. Also, a saber-toothed cat-like creature called the Nimravid roamed around. Could the Titanoboa have adapted in new and different ways to spawn a line of desert Titanoboas? Yeah, I know I said that living on land would be tough for such a massive creature, but maybe there's an evolutionary path to make this possible. To camouflage in the desert, it would need to adapt a new color scheme, a light sandy color. And its next most important adaptation? Strong muscles to burrow into desert soil and live underground during the day, both to conserve energy and to hunt under the cover of darkness. Now, to protect against water loss through the skin, the Titanoboa would take a lesson from the spadefoot toad. This toad secretes a semi-permeable membrane that makes its skin thick, locking in moisture. Our desert Titanoboa would branch out and have a new diet of birds and mammals. Many desert animals are too small to make a meal, so Titanoboa would lie in wait for a herd of camels, slither out of its burrow and make a killing. Or it might go months without food. So the evolutionary path of Titanoboas could lead to two subspecies. The first one is shark-like, swimming far and wide across the ocean, able to preserve its body heat through adaptations that make it warm-blooded. And the second is also warm-blooded, but lives in burrows deep in the desert, like the sandworms from Dune. They emerge from the burrows with lightning speed, only to strike, eat, and then retreat back underground. These 21st century Titanoboas would be as long as 23 meters and about 1.2 meters wide. Imagine going for a swim in the ocean and running into one of those. You'd have just enough time for one last breath. 6,000 years ago to today. Now, this brings us to the question of how modern-day humans might interact with these magnificent and terrifying creatures. Before the start of modern hunting, Titanoboas would have been legendary, frightening sea creatures that terrified humans. Our ancestors would probably be scared of going in the ocean. Who knows? Any swim could be your last if you encountered a Titanoboa. The only good news would have been that these enormous creatures would probably have little interest in eating you. Because humans would provide little sustenance, they'd rather catch a large fish or crocodile. That would be much more satisfying. Now, as humans developed better weapons, the relationship would have changed. There's evidence of humans hunting whales as far back as 6000 BCE. If the Titanoboa was still around, it may have been a target of fishermen thousands of years ago. Maybe these snakes would become part of our diet. If their meat was tasty, who knows? Maybe humans would have hunted them to near extinction by now. In today's world, it'd be a lot like the occasional shark attack. We'd probably hear about rare Titanoboa attacks on humans who swam too far out into the ocean. In the desert, nomadic tribes would probably fear the random, unpredictable attacks of the desert Titanoboa. Camels would have evolved to be super sensitive to those giant snakes' underground movements. Maybe they'd warn humans when they sensed activity underground. With infrared technology, we'd be able to detect the heat signature of Titanoboas in their underground burrows. Future. But in today's fast-changing world, something new and interesting would be happening. Human activity has reversed the cooling trend. With global warming, temperatures are becoming attractive for reptiles again. Our newly evolved Titanoboas have a warm-blooded inner architecture that has helped them survive the cooling of prior epochs, but as the Earth heats again, the Titanoboa would, once again, lean on the environment for heat rather than using its muscular inner activity. Conditions would be ripe for the Titanoboa to hunt even more effectively and grow bigger. As sea levels rise in future years, our coastal cities will be flooded and destroyed. The warm weather will help new generations of Titanoboa thrive. But the traditional habitats of the Titanoboa are currently being destroyed. The lush tropical swamplands and forests near tropical waters are being wiped out by logging and commercial activity. The growing acidification of the waters will kill the marine life that the Titanoboa feeds on. This would prove to be the biggest challenge for the creature, the destruction of its food supply. But there is one prey left for the Titanoboa. It would have to eat several to make a meal of them, but there's lots around. You guessed it, I'm talking about us. Maybe we'd become the target of the new ferocious Titanoboa. Watch out the next time a coastal city floods. There's a giant, vicious lizard monster lurking in the ocean. It's more massive than any creature that exists today. Say hello to the modern-day Mosasaurus. This creature went extinct 66 million years ago, but what if it evolved to live today? In this episode, we're going to look at the special traits the Mosasaurus would need in order to avoid extinction, and what kind of terrifying beast it would evolve into if it lived in the modern day. A world with modern-day Mosasaurus would change everything. Instead of just shark attacks, stories of random Mosasaurus attacks would be in the news. This ambush predator might attack unsuspecting swimmers who venture a little too far away from shore. And it wouldn't just be the loss of a limb. No, the Mosasaurus is a deadly, opportunistic hunter that eats any prey that comes its way. It would hunt you down incredibly fast. Using a quick burst of energy, it would accelerate from 0 to 48 kilometers per hour in just a second. Similar to a crocodile, which can suddenly lurch into action. If you were less than 30 meters away from this beast, it would be on you before you could even blink. Propelling it is a super powerful tail fin, just like a shark's. But this tail fin could put the Mosasaurus in jeopardy. In today's world, just like shark fin soup, Mosasaurus tail fin soup would be a specialty dish, sought after by humans who believe in traditional medicine. It wouldn't have any particular properties to make humans superhuman-like, but the myth would persist. Now, given the might of the Mosasaurus, acquiring its tail fin would be a much more difficult feat. Humans could only get one if Mosasaurus washed up dead on shore. Hunting this creature would not be a viable option. If you were ambushed by the Mosasaurus, you'd find yourself caught in its massive double-hinged jaw. Rows of sharp teeth line every part of its mouth. These teeth aren't for chewing food. No, they're used for clamping down and holding prey in place. On that very first bite, the Mosasaurus can go right through their prey and kill it. After that, all that's left is for our modern-day Mosasaurus to swallow its victim whole. The double hinging of jaws means that they both work independently. Each time the jaw ratchets back, the prey gets pushed in several feet. A 6-foot-long sunbather? Well, they'd be swallowed in just a couple of bites. Think you've got a chance of slipping out once you're caught by these jaws? Yeah, that's unfortunately not the case. To prevent wriggling prey from escaping, the Mosasaurus has a third row of teeth that line the upper jaw. This is just a taste of the Mosasaurus's incredible power. Deadly Mosasaurus had humble beginnings. 98 million years ago. The Mosasaurus's journey starts with the Aegialosaurs. This was a family of monitor lizards who made their way from land and back to water. These lizards were the Mosasaurus's ancestors. They were much smaller, no more than 1.5 meters long. Over the next few million years during the Cretaceous period, these little guys underwent a rapid evolution, an evolution that spawned about 40 different species of mosasaur. And one in particular emerged much bigger and badder. The Mosasaurus hoffmanni, commonly referred to as the Mosasaurus, was the biggest and most ferocious of these species. This creature was 9 to 15 meters in length. That's even longer than the T-Rex. It lived in oceans everywhere around Earth. It would slither around with its long, streamlined body, and its legs were extremely powerful. They transformed into whale-like flippers that would help with swimming and provide stability. As the Mosasaurus evolved and became bigger, older apex predators called ichthyosaurs went extinct, allowing the Mosasaurus to become even more dominant. Over the 25 million years that the Mosasaurus lived on Earth, they evolved into truly terrifying creatures. They ate sharks, dolphins, sea turtles, and any other creature they could sink their teeth into. They'd even eat their own species. Yeah, the Mosasaurus was a ruthless cannibal when the opportunity was presented. In fact, one mosasaur fossil was discovered with 3 mosasaur skulls inside of it. Today, we puny humans would just be a light snack for the Mosasaurus. To satisfy its voracious appetite, it would go after today's biggest marine animals. Whales would be a favorite, and of course it would have no problem devouring one of its own kind. To do this, it would smash its opponent with its snout. This was a trait of one species of mosasaur, the Tylosaurus. Tylosauruses had bony growths protecting their front teeth and forming a key part of their reinforced snout. This bony snout would be a valuable trait that our modern-day Mosasaurus would likely have incorporated over multiple waves of evolution. Now, once it dealt a blow with its snout, the Mosasaurus would begin to devour any massive creature. But how did the Mosasaurus find its prey in the first place? It would smell them out. The Mosasaurus was equipped with a third nifty feature, a forked tongue that it used to smell its prey underwater. This is called chemoreception. The tongue flicks out, gathers odor molecules, and then delivers them to an organ in the mouth that detects prey. This same smelling organ was used to smell out a potential mate. Good luck to that potential mate if it has the wrong smell. It might become dinner instead. If the Mosasaurus were alive today, humans would be in some pretty big trouble. Imagine swimming in the ocean and you had a cut seeping a tiny bit of blood into the water. Well, the Mosasaurus would smell it and snatch you up in an instant. Deep sea diving might just stop being a thing. How could you predict when the Mosasaurus would come and get you from the depths of the ocean? Now, the Mosasaurus that lived and died 66 million years ago didn't venture into deep ocean waters, but a Mosasaurus that evolves to survive extinction? Well, that one would. To understand why, we have to go back to the catastrophe that wiped out both the dinosaurs and the mosasaurs and see how the Mosasaurus could have evolved with different traits in order to survive. Traits that would make it particularly deadly in our modern world, 66 million years ago. All right, let's go back to a time where something completely unexpected happened, something that would change the course of history. An asteroid came hurtling out of the sky and crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula. An enormous crater was carved into Earth and tsunamis rose into the air. With the heat of the crash, rocks melted, throwing tiny molten particles into the air. This came back down to Earth in the form of hot, deadly shards. Any Mosasaurus poking its head out of the shallow water would have been shredded instantly. A cloud of ash enveloping Earth caused a decade-long impact winter. killing off the majority of plants and animals. Sulfuric acid rained down on the oceans, and 90% of phytoplankton went extinct. In the oceans, the marine ecosystem collapsed. 75% of marine animals died out. This was a major problem for Mosasaurus, as their food source was disappearing. But there still was some food out there, mostly in the form of new types of algae popping up. These became a food source for krill and shrimp. So, could the Mosasaurus use these as a food source? Well, unfortunately, no. Large predators need large prey, not krill. So, the mighty Mosasaurus, which had ruled the oceans for the past 25 million years, went extinct. Could there have been another way for the Mosasaurus to survive? Well, let's look at what features the sea animals who did survive had. Sharks are particularly interesting because they've lived through many different extinctions. One of the reasons sharks were able to survive this extinction is that they don't just hunt in shallow water. Sharks have the ability to navigate to different parts of the water to find food, from warm waters to the depths of the ocean. Now, being partially warm-blooded helps sharks maintain a higher internal body temperature, allowing them to survive in really cold waters. They also have the ability to move through varying depths of water, increasing their options for food. The Mosasaurus was limited to hunting mostly shallow waters. It was a pretty good swimmer, but it didn't wander too far from the shoreline. Its strength was to make quick bursts of power to make a kill, rather than taking long swims. A Mosasaurus that evolved into a more tapered body and with paddles that were more fin-like would have fared better. This Mosasaurus would have been better able to migrate to different parts of the ocean, covering the waters at a steady pace. Scientists have evidence that the Mosasaurus was already warm-blooded. This will come in handy as its new swimming prowess takes it to different parts of the ocean. Because it's warm-blooded, it can maintain its internal body temperature even in cold water. Finally, this Mosasaurus will need a swim bladder, an adaptation that will borrow from deep-sea sharks. This bladder is a gas-filled sac that it can inflate or deflate whenever it likes, allowing it to roam different depths of the ocean. Okay, are we done? Oh, no, we might need one more modification. We need to move the sinuses of the Mosasaurus to be external, like what whales and dolphins have. This is what enables them to dive deep. With external sinuses, there's less of a chance that the Mosasaurus will suffer skull damage from too much compression at the lower depths. Alright, this iteration of the Mosasaurus would have easily survived this mass extinction event. It would have swum deep out into the ocean to hunt prey like sharks. These survival mechanisms would make the Mosasaurus a terror in all parts of the oceans today, and at the same time, a nearly invincible survivor. Our modern-day Mosasaurus would be an incredibly vicious predator. But there's a second, more gentle version that could have evolved as well. To see how a second version of the Mosasaurus might have evolved, we have to go back again, this time to the Paleogene epoch, spanning 66 million to 23 million years ago. The extinction event 66 million years ago would have kicked off the first tiny change. Mosasauruses were struggling to find sufficiently large prey. Some might have been less skilled at hunting sharks, some of the largest prey available. Well, these Mosasauruses may have started to suck up smaller fish, swallowing them whole. As they evolved with this diet, there would have been less use for the 3 rows of sharp teeth that they used to catch and kill larger marine animals. Maybe a subset of these Mosasaurus began to evolve into filter feeders. The first transition, well, possibly a gradual change in skull shape to be more adapted to sucking in rather than chomping on prey. This type of evolutionary change has been seen in whales. Ancient whales had teeth, but a subset of them underwent evolutionary changes, lost their teeth, and became filter feeders. Okay, let's fast forward to 56 million years ago. Temperatures rose in what's called the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. Massive volcanic eruptions shot tons of carbon dioxide up into the air, causing temperatures to increase by about 8 degrees Celsius. That's 14 degrees Fahrenheit. The North and South poles felt like the tropics. What would happen with our two different Mosasaurus species during this time? Well, first, let's look at the ferocious mosasaur. Two different scenarios could play out. One possibility is that the Mosasaurus, a giant reptile that thrived in warm temperatures, would have gotten a massive boost in size. Other reptiles like crocodiles and turtles would have thrived as well. This Mosasaurus would have fed on whatever prey was available. Sharks, crocs, turtles. They would have gotten larger and larger, reaching 25 to 30 meters in length. Now, in a second scenario, our Mosasaurus might have found the temperature spike challenging. Ocean waters absorbing more carbon dioxide might have become increasingly acidic. We know a lot of marine life died off during this period. Well, lucky for our Mosasaurus, it was already adapted to roam in different parts of the ocean. It would have been able to swim in open waters looking for large prey, or it could swim into warmer areas to eat alligators. Okay, let's have a look at our second Mosasaurus, the gentle giant that's also evolving at this time. Its food sources would have been changing. During the temperature spike, algae blooms appeared on the coastal waters, food for marine microorganisms like krill. The gentle giant's signature sharp teeth would have first become narrow and spiky, acting like a type of mesh, and then, over time, they would have transformed into a sieve-like structure, enabling the Mosasaurus to feed on tiny sea creatures like plankton and krill, filtering them out from the seawater. Now, after this heating event 56 million years ago, temperatures began to cool down, but then rose to their previous levels during the Eocene optimum. But both our Mosasauruses, with newly evolved traits, would be experts in getting through this hot period. This would be a repeat of what each species had done before. The vicious Mosasaurus would swim the oceans, and the gentle giant would feed on the krill. 34 million years ago. Temperatures on Earth gradually declined until about 34 million years ago. Both species of Mosasaurus would have thrived using their different survival strategies. One would have become a more ruthless killing machine, and the other would have mirrored the evolution of whales, getting large, eating plankton and krill. In today's world, the victims of the ruthless Mosasaurus wouldn't just be the casual swimmers and deep-sea divers. Smaller fishing boats would get attacked by groups of Mosasaurus. More about why that would be the case in a second. Because of that behavior, the safest commercial operations in the 21st century would be large fishing boats, the ones built like tanks. But even these bruisers would stay clear of the hunting grounds of these gigantic sea monsters. So, what would have made the vicious Mosasaurus evolve as pack hunters? This behavior would have been created by a real evolutionary need. The fossil records of Mosasauruses from 66 million years ago don't reveal them to be social creatures. They would regularly engage in big snout fights, battling for dominance. But this nasty behavior may have led to their cooperation over time. Now, to understand why, let's go to the Neogene period, 23 to 2.6 million years ago. During this time, the Megalodon evolved, the biggest shark ever, scarfing down 1,200 kilograms of food a day. The Meg would have been a key rival of our Mosasaurus. Both the Meg and the Mosasaurus would have been competing for baleen whales, the big marine mammals of that time. Maybe in order to compete with the Meg, the Mosasaurus would have opted to be a little more friendly. Maybe instead of fighting with their own species, they would start to team up for the hunt. 2.6 million years ago. This need for cooperative behavior would have become solidified even more during the first part of the Quaternary period, 2.6 million years ago. Around 20 periods of glaciation came and went, greatly stressing the environment and its inhabitants. Now, during this time, the baleen whale, the bread and butter of the apex predator diet, was fighting to survive itself. Competition for food would have intensified even more. Now, both the Meg and the Mosasaurus were fundamentally solitary creatures in adulthood. Large, powerful predators usually are. But it's possible that the Mosasauruses that had begun cooperating with each other would have survived better, so this trait would have been favored in new generations. Maybe it would have just been a small pod with 2 to 3 members, but enough to cover the center, front, and rear during the kill. In this formation, the Mosasaurus can take on any mighty megs, as well as any great white sharks. Hunting in a coordinated way and being part of a social group all require a high degree of intelligence. Mosasauruses would have grown a bigger brain during this period. And the result of this behavioral change? The Mosasaurus would have outcompeted the Megalodon for food. The Meg would have gone extinct 2.6 million years ago, maybe earlier, as it would have been fighting both the great white sharks and the newly evolved Mosasaurus for food. The Mosasaurus would have continued to reign supreme, fighting with the sharks to eat the whales. Plus, Mosasaurus pods would have targeted enormous whale sharks and blue whales, especially if they found one swimming by itself. And remember, these Mosasaurus are still cannibals, so they might even go after the gentle giant Mosasaurus that evolved. So, how would the gentle giant Mosasaurus have fared during the Ice Ages? Well, they would have become even bigger. The gentle giants would have grown exceptionally big during this time, swimming thousands of kilometers to feast on the massive amounts of krill and other nutrients. Today, after the last ice age, around 11,000 years ago, the modern-day Mosasaurus would grow massive. The oceans would be teeming with large prey for food: whales, sharks, dolphins. Its body is adapted to roam far and wide to kill prey, so it becomes larger and larger, a huge predator of the 21st century. Okay, this is the Mosasaurus you saw at the start of this episode. 40 meters long, 200 tons, the menace of the sea. In contrast, the gentle giant Mosasaurus would be found mostly in the coldest waters of the Antarctic, far, far away from its evil twin. Governments would debate whether to use systematic methods to kill off these modern-day Mos, but ethicists would weigh in against it, saying that it's our duty to coexist with other species. A consensus would emerge allowing the Mosasaurus its hunting grounds, separate from us humans. And the 2 giant Mosasaurus species would be essential to keeping our modern ocean environment in balance. The vicious Mosasaurus would weed out the weak and sick large marine animals, keeping ocean populations healthy. Similar to sharks, the Mosasaurus would hunt large predators like the grouper, which in turn hunts herbivorous fish. With these populations maintained at the right levels, algae growth is kept in check and coral reefs flourish. And for our safety, as our technology improves, humans would find ways of using sonar to spot these beasts ahead of time, map out where they fish, and plot out other areas for us to hang out. Meanwhile, the fashion industry's never-ending need for lizard skin bags and clothes would result in the targeting of the gentle giant Mosasaurus. They would be hunted to near extinction. Now, as their population dwindled, whales would grow larger and take over their ecological niche. And the day of reckoning is coming because at its size, the vicious Mosasaurus would be consuming so many large marine animals. And the bigger it gets, the more it hunts. Welcome to Prehistoric Australia, a place that was filled with dangerous and terrifying megafauna. This was a time of giant kangaroos, mega marsupial lions, super long snakes, and terrifying birds. If you think Australia is scary today, just wait until we go back 100,000 years. Almost everything wanted you dead. But humans did manage to live side by side with these creatures and survive. But how? In this episode, we'll explore how humans survived during this era and whether or not we were the cause of these creatures' extinctions. This is What If, and here's what would happen if you lived in prehistoric Australia. You've arrived in the midst of the late Pleistocene era, which ran from 126,000 to 12,000 years ago. Once you land on the Australian shores, you'll be met with some massive and terrifying beasts. Let's take a look at some of the most terrifying ones. Don't look now, but behind you is the Diprotodon, the biggest marsupial that ever roamed the earth. This particular specimen is coming in at 3.8 meters long and 1.8 meters high. It weighs as much as a car. Its big head comes with an enormous mouth, powerful jaws, and upper incisors the size of bananas. It uses all these to maintain its diet, but would that include you? Well, good news, you'll be safe from this guy because the Diprotodon is a herbivore, one that eats an unbelievable amount of fibrous plant matter, including branches, leaves, shrubs, and stems. Up to 100 kilograms of plant matter on a daily basis. This binge eating had a huge impact on the environment, but in a good way. The Diprotodon would eat and of course, poop, dispersing plant seeds far and wide. Because this creature ate so much food, it needed to have a pretty massive head. If it hadn't been for one odd evolutionary trait, it might not have been able to lift it up off the ground. The Diprotodon was lucky enough to have a skull full of air pockets, making it much lighter to lift. They lived all over Australia, except Tasmania. Some scientists believe there's a possibility they might have been migratory creatures. If that's true, they would have been the only marsupials to behave that way. Time to meet another creature from prehistoric Australia. This time, it's a lot scarier. It's a huge goanna. This gigantic monitor lizard, called the Megalodon prisca, is the largest land-based lizard of all time. It was a ferocious reptilian predator, a carnivore that ate large mammals, snakes, birds, and other reptiles, so it's probably a good idea to stay clear of this guy. This lizard could grow as long as 5 meters and weighed up to 575 kilograms. If you look closely at its snout, you'll see an unusual crest. This snout housed some scary sharp teeth that curved backward. This goanna was both an ambush predator and a scavenger. It would lay in wait for its next victim, innocent kangaroos, deer, wild pigs, maybe even you. Then it would pounce. Its toxic saliva would first cause an infection and shortly after, death. This guy is still around today. Sort of. You can see relatives of the Megalonia in reptiles like the Komodo dragon. But its closest relative is another lizard in Australia, the Parenti. At least this one isn't as massive. If you think this giant lizard is bad, just wait until you see what we have next. Time to check out another beast, this time a non-venomous one. A giant snake called the Wonambi. Wonambi like to live in the cool and dry regions of Australia. Now, I just told you it's non-venomous, but you'd probably want to stay away from it anyway. Like the Megalonia, it was an ambush predator, and it liked to kill its prey by squeezing them to death. If you're wandering around prehistoric Australia, you might encounter it hanging out by a watering hole. Usually it goes after kangaroos and wallabies who are stopping by for a drink. The Wonambi like to wrap its 4 to 6 meter long body tightly around you until you stop breathing. Luckily, these snakes aren't around anymore. So, these megafauna were living in Australia all throughout the Pleistocene period, from 2.5 million years ago. But if we fast forward 40,000 to 60,000 years ago, something terrible happens. The megafauna go extinct. Just a little before the extinctions occurred, a new apex predator arrived on land. Was it some new, terrible, and scary beast? No, it was just us humans. If you were around during this time, you would have been part of the earliest Australians on the continent. They arrived maybe 65,000 years ago, coming by boat to northern Australia and then quickly spreading around the coast and into the interior. Which brings us to two important questions. First, how did humans survive these dangerous megafauna? Well, early humans were armed with two critical weapons to survive living amongst these creatures: fire and hunting weapons. Scientists have found megafauna remains while looking at old Aboriginal settlements. One of the weapons of choice to fend off these megafauna may have been sharpened bones. But that's not all. It's also suspected that these early humans developed the use of nets to capture some of these creatures. Since they moved so fast, it would have been difficult to spear them effectively, but flinging a net over them, well, that could be an easy and effective way to slow them down and then go in for the kill. To further protect yourself during this time, you'd want to build a shelter. Rock and bone shelters were a popular choice in prehistoric Australia because they could prevent animals from getting in and eating you. These structures were also essential to protect you from the environment. Australia during this time had different temperatures, geographies, and climates. Humans mostly settled around the coast, which had savanna-like climates and occasional rainfalls. If you moved inland, you'd be met with harsher, desert-like regions. There were limited water sources, made for a tough environment for humans to survive in. But less water actually benefited the early humans, since it made it easier to travel all around Australia. Land bridges were exposed, helping humans migrate to new places and survive these terrifying megafauna. What other animals did they have to survive against? Well, hopefully something a little friendlier this time. If you try going into a lake for a swim, you might encounter the ruthless freshwater crocodile. This giant beast was up to 5 meters long and was nicknamed the Swamp King. Its prey were creatures coming for water at mud springs or innocent humans stopping for a swim. The freshwater crocodile was built to be a ferocious predator. It had deeper and wider jaws than modern saltwater crocodiles. Today, its closest living relative is the Indo-Pacific crocodile, which can grow up to 6 meters. But the old Swamp King was bulkier than this modern-day croc and had a bigger snout. Okay, let's get away from this croc and go find... Any guesses? Yeah, another terrifying creature that wants to kill you. And this one might be the scariest yet. If we swoop down into one of the ancient forests, we're going to see a pretty unusual lion-type predator, the Thylacoleo. This wasn't like a lion you'd find at the zoo. It was a carnivorous marsupial, like a cross between a kangaroo and a deadly cat, fully equipped with a pouch to carry its young. It's known as one of the most destructive predatory beasts ever, and there's a good reason for that description. Scientists have found that the Thylacoleo had a bite strength of 250 kilograms. Though it scavenged when it got a chance, it was an ambush predator, equipped with some of the fiercest teeth ever seen for effective killing. Large serrated upper incisors and enlarged cheek teeth helped it tear apart its prey. Plus, like my cute little house cat, it had a thumb claw in a sheath. But unlike my kitty, this claw was very large and may have been used to disembowel its victims. With these teeth and powerful bite, the Thylacoleo could have taken on almost any creature. If you encountered this predator in the Australian outback, there's one saving grace. It wasn't the fastest runner, so if you see this beast, get running. Run as fast and as long as you can, and don't try to climb up a tree because this beast was well equipped for that. Now, there's a lot of debate as to what this creature's total diet consisted of. Its ancestors were herbivores, so there's some speculation that this marsupial lion also enjoyed a salad with its steak. Other yummy parts of its diet included crocodile eggs and bone marrow. Under the melon muncher hypothesis, some have speculated that the Thylacoleo ate native cucumbers, but somehow I just can't imagine this beast feasting on a jar of garlic dills. Thylacoleo didn't have the kind of grinding teeth we normally see in herbivores, so if it ate the odd plant or the odd cuke, it would likely only have been once in a while. It would much rather dine on you. Okay, let's check out another nightmarish creature, the thunderbird. This bird stood over 2 meters high and had these giant hind legs. The only issue? Well, it was also equipped with teeny tiny wings, so it couldn't fly. It's kind of cute now that you look at it. This bird weighed a lot, around 220 to 240 kilograms. And naturally, its eggs were pretty darn heavy too, coming in at over 1.5 kilograms. The Thunderbird made up for its lack of flight by being a super fast runner. Pair that with its powerful beak, and would it want to have you for breakfast? Thankfully not, as it was probably a herbivore. Finally, something that doesn't want you dead. Phew. Is the Thunderbird still around today? Yeah, sort of. Its ancestors are today's ducks and geese. Oh, have the mighty have fallen. Now, remember, there are two key questions during this time. We now know how humans survived prehistoric Australia, but we also know that, sadly, the megafauna died out. So the second question is, what made the megafauna go extinct? Is it humans? Or something else? Well, different scientists subscribe to different theories on this. And speaking of which, you should subscribe to our Patreon. There, you can watch episodes like this one early and ad-free. You also get front-of-the-line access to our Discord, where you can pitch us your own what-if ideas. Okay, enough shelling. How did the megafauna go extinct? Well, according to one theory, sometimes referred to as the Blitzkrieg theory, the early Australians slaughtered all the animals from the late Pleistocene era. They went extinct within 1,000 years. Those who subscribe to this theory argue that it would have taken a few thousand years for humans to establish themselves and spread out across the continent. That's why we see an overlap between the two, but humans would have been gradually eating and killing off these megafauna during that time. Killing off the entire species in just 1,000 years seems a little wonky. Okay, now let's revisit the Thunderbirds we met earlier because they carry a clue. Scientists have been studying burn patterns on eggshell fossils. What caused them? Humans? Nature? They've concluded that the burns were not from natural fires, so there's some evidence that humans played a hand in these birds' fate. And looking at humans' destructive behavior nowadays, it's easy enough to believe that it's the humans who were responsible. But there's also evidence disproving this theory. First off, some scientists argue that a lot of the megafauna, maybe up to 85%, were already extinct before humans got there. But most important, fossils of megafauna have been found that date to periods well after humans arrived on the scene. This proves that humans and these giant beasts coexisted for a long time, anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 years of overlap. This indicates that while early humans might have hunted these large beasts, they did it in a sustainable way. If this is true and humans were hunting sustainably, there's got to be something else that was deadly to the megafauna. It's something we're very familiar with today: climate change. As the last ice age began to thaw, it would have had huge implications on habitats. The critical period for Australian fauna would have been around 30,000 years ago. Some scientists who've studied climate change have noticed that things were getting warmer and drier as the ice age came to an end. Let's visit a spot in Australia called Cuddle Springs. Despite what the name suggests, it's not a hot spot for cuddling, but it is a spot where different kinds of megafauna fossils can be found. Comparing fossils from 500,000 years ago with those from about 40,000 years ago, scientists found that the older creatures ate greens that indicated a much wetter climate. The 40,000-year-old specimens had to settle for plants that grew in much drier environments. As a result, the later megafauna gave up eating saltbush, a shrub that the older megafauna had enjoyed. These creatures figured out that when there isn't enough water to go around, you need to limit your salt intake. Anyone who's bought the extra-large popcorn and the small Coke Zero knows that. And this tracks with what we know about the climate. Toward the end of the Pleistocene, Ice Age glaciers melted as the planet warmed. This, in turn, impacted plants and shrubs and affected the megafauna. The drying out of the environment, a higher frequency of fires, and the disappearance of grasslands, changes in vegetation, may have led many of these creatures to go extinct. The scientists in the Blitzkrieg camp have a response to this view on climate change. They argue that the climate has been going through cold and dry, alternating with warm and wet cycles over and over again for the last 2.5 million years, and yet the megafauna had survived those cycles multiple times. It was only when humans landed on the scene that the megafauna were unable to cope with climate change. So they may have a point. For sure, the argument isn't settled yet. It could be humans who made the megafauna extinct, or it may have been the environment, or maybe it was something somewhere in between. The one thing we know for sure is that humans are powerful predators with an unmatched ability to impact our environment. We're seeing that today as the temperature continues to rise relentlessly due to human-induced warming. Humans are both incredible creators and destroyers. Okay, next, let's jump over to another time period. Let's go back over 100 million years ago to the Cretaceous period. Think you'd be able to survive there? Well, that sounds like a story for another What If. This is the Megatherium, a giant sloth that roamed Earth just 12,000 years ago. This beast stood more than 3.5 meters tall. And today, we're gonna see what this creature was all about. Oof, that one hurt. But this is just one way you might die from a prehistoric animal. Creatures that lived thousands or millions of years ago were absolutely terrifying. From giant dinosaurs to the largest snakes